Hello and welcome to The Big Fight. Now, there's been so much attention for such a long time on the entire question of corruption and inducements in one form or the other to government and to bureaucrats and the other thing. One of the things that we do need to take a close look at, because it is not clearly defined or regulated and there are no clear-cut laws in it, is at what point does the wrong end and the right begin when it comes to things like lobbying. Now, lobbying by itself is perfectly permissible, I guess, in India, but what is allowed, what is not allowed, what are the guidelines that should actually be governing lobbying? That is one of the things that we're going to take a look at here, because it is a big subject of considerable debate in every country of the world, including in countries like the United States, where it's not just a cottage industry, it's a massive industry. It's one of the biggest industries out there. India could be heading in that direction at some point, so it's important to get some basic ground rules or guidelines, if you like, into place. And we've got a fantastic panel who are, if you like, going to draft the ground rules for what we should and we should not do in the world of lobbying over the next 1 hour, right here on The Big Fight. Let's not wait for Parliament. To start with, Dilip Cherian, Dilip, image guru, PR expert, all sorts of things. I won't introduce you any further. Satinath Sarangi is an activist. He'd worked very closely in Bhopal and has a very strong view on what lobbyists have done in Bhopal and other such areas. Sharif Rangnekar, president of the Nodal Association for the consultancy world, which really covers PR. He's also, of course, the CEO of Integral PR. Sharif, great that you could join us. We have Devinder Sharma, who's done a lot of work in food and trade policy, and again has a certain view on what lobbyists have often done. It's actually interesting. I'm suddenly looking at the dress code. Other than Dilip, most of the people who are opposed to the lobbyists and their activities are in kurta pajamas on this show. Okay. So Raian Karanjawala, one of our top corporate lawyers. So Raian, your suit gives it away. Exactly which side? Yeah, I'm also wearing a suit out here, and he's got a Nehru jacket. So there we are. And Amitava, Behar, Director of the National Foundation of India, thanks so much for joining us. Where do we stand in lobbying? Raian, why don't you go first?
At the moment, lobbying is legal. The only thing is that it's not regulated. And lobbying essentially is understood by most people to be something like advocacy, except that it's not advocacy in court. For example, when you have CII, you have FICCI, when they go and meet and make representations before ministers, in a sense, they're lobbying. And so, therefore, lobbying is completely legal. What does give it a bad name is if it crosses the line, someone is induced financially to do something, then actually the word for it is bribery. And it should not be confused with lobbying. Simply.
Okay. Amitava?
I think the right question to ask is, should lobbying be banned? And I would say yes, particularly if you're talking of corporate lobbying. I think the important distinction that we need to make is between when private interests are being lobbied for and when public interests are being lobbied for. So when it's public interest, that's advocacy. We have been doing that for years. We have a huge history of people's struggles.
How would that actually work in practice? Because you're saying that, let's say there's a certain set of groups like yours which are arguing for a position against a corporate interest, right? You are saying that part of the lobbying is fine. The minute the person is lobbying from the private side, then that should be banned.
I did not say vis-a-vis the corporates. I said if the lobbying, the issue is of public interest, at least in a country like India, the public interest is reasonably clear, and if the lobbying is for private interest, I think there is a huge problem there, and then particularly if it's backed by inducements and if there's any form of corruption. So it's actually buying policies, then there's a problem.
As in so many of these debates, it's always going to come down to where you draw the specific line, so we'll try and arrive at that. But Sharif?
See, I think lobbying is heavily misunderstood. I mean, lobbying is historically a constitutional right because it's right to expression. You have the right to express your interest in something, and I think that's the genesis of it. It started way back in the 1300 in UK, and then what the US followed, they looked at it as a right to be heard. And I think in that situation, when it's a democracy, I think everyone should have those rights. But the problem that arrives, or the negative kind of impression that lobbying carries, comes only because it's invariably followed by a controversy. But what good lobbying does, or in terms of a right to express yourself, which is for everyone, that never gets heard, because it's like, you know, a plane flying and you never talk about it when it flies normally. You only talk about it when it crashes. So, so I think lobbying suffers from a bit of that. It's invariably that it's the PR industry or the public affairs industry which gets kind of caught in these debates of contentious debates,
Right.
but never really the legal fraternity, which is actually the largest lobbyist across the world. The largest lobbyist in the US is a law firm, not a PR firm, not a PA firm.
Okay, Devinder?
For quite some time, I used to think that the economic policies of the country are drawn by economists or by the policymakers, and they know what is in the interest of India. But lately, over the last few years, I've realized that the policies are not designed by our economists or the policymakers. They are actually designed or being worked out or by the lobbyist. It's the corporate interest which actually designs all those policies. We all are told, we are made to believe that they are good for you, but actually they are only good for the corporates. And this is increasingly that what I am seeing, and I'm worried not only at this instance of the corporates taking over or designing the economic agenda of the country, but what is more important is now even the political heads are doing it. After 2009, if you have seen those 5 heads of the international heads who came to India, starting with Obama, President of the British Prime Minister, the French President, and so on, they all lobbied for FDI retail in India. So, no, it's gone up to that level.
So I'm trying to figure out at what point are you going to ban this? Are you going to say Obama should be banned from coming to India because he's lobbying?
I just want to say that we only think that lobbying is confined to lawyers or to the corporations or to the NGOs and so on. But now even the heads of the states are lobbying. And I think that is something we know. When Obama came to India and said that India must open up for FDI and retail, of course Obama knew what is good for his country. But the tragedy was that the Prime Minister of India also knew what is good for America. So that's the kind of lobbying that takes place. I think we must be very clear about it. Yeah.
Okay. Is Obama officially a lobbyist or not is something which I guess we have to address at some point. Dilip.
For a moment, consider a marketplace. And any resemblance to institutions that some of you recognize is entirely accidental. It consists of people in an unregulated space who are pushing telas, throwing things at each other, arguing, bargaining, etc., etc. There's no regulation happening there. And then government brings about a law which says everybody who sells fruits or shirts over here must comply to strict ISO 2008 standards.